Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into a really timely and I think important topic.
Definitely.
We're looking at public monuments, statues, especially the ones tied to colonial legacies and how they're being seen differently now. Things are changing.
Yeah, societal change is really putting them under the microscope.
And a huge part of this whole global conversation was the Black Lives Matter protests. You probably remember the Edward Colston statue in Bristol, England. That was a big moment.
A pivotal one. And our source for this deep dive, it's a detailed research paper, just came out in April 2025.
Okay.
From the IOSR Journal of Humanities and Social Science. It's called Counter Monuments and Community Voices, Reimagining Public Spaces in the Wake of the Black Lives Matter Protests. The author is Dr. Luis Valerio P. Trindade.
Right.
And what's really interesting is the method. They used sentiment analysis on Facebook comments.
Sentiment analysis. Okay, so what does that actually mean in this context?
It's basically using, software or algorithms to sift through loads of public comments and figure out the general tone. Is it positive, negative, neutral? It's like a quick, objective way to read the room, digitally speaking.
Gotcha. So our mission today for you listening is to unpack what these events really mean. We want to understand the different feelings people have, and they are different, sometimes really conflicting.
Yeah, definitely not monolithic.
And explore how these moments are making us rethink our cities, our public spaces. How can they better reflect, what the community actually wants and believes?
Exactly. And just a little preview, the paper found a pretty high negative sentiment, 64.3%, towards that temporary statue that went up after Colston's came down.
Wow. Okay. So that shows tension.
Big tensions.
Yeah.
But it also hints at how these events, even the controversial ones, can act as these counter-monuments, places for us all to stop and think.
Okay. So let's set the scene a bit. To really get why this is all happening now, we need to look back, right?
Yeah, history is key here.
European colonialism, 15th to 18th centuries. It left behind some really damaging, long-lasting stuff.
Devastating legacies, yeah. Systemic racism, discrimination, marginalization of ethnic minorities.
Specifically thinking Black communities, indigenous communities.
Yeah.
Across North and Latin America especially.
And one really sort of visible part of that legacy is all the symbols from that era.
Right, not just the big statues.
No, exactly. Things like flags, the Confederate flag in the U.S. is a prime example, seen as a symbol of white supremacy, but also language. Terms like master bedroom or blacklist, ghetto, sold down the river, these things hang around.
Yeah, you still hear them.
And then, of course, the street names, sculptures, and the public monuments themselves, they're kind of baked into the cityscape.
Which brings us to that really pivotal moment, George Floyd's death in May 2020.
A tragic catalyst.
It just ignited these huge street demonstrations, not just in the U.S., it went global. People protesting systemic racism, police brutality.
It really tapped into something deep. And that outrage, it wasn't just abstract. In a lot of places, people directly targeted those symbols we were just talking about.
The statues and monuments linked to slavery and colonialism.
Exactly. The paper actually lists a whole bunch from the protests. Christopher Columbus in places like Argentina, Colombia, the U.S.
Right.
King Leopold II in Belgium, Manuel de Borbagato in Brazil, even Queen Elizabeth II in Canada.
And in the UK.
Oh, yeah. Edward Colston, obviously, but also Cecil Rhodes, John Hawkins, Robert Milligan. Lots of figures connected to that history. David Hume in Scotland, Jefferson Davis in the U.S. The list goes on.
And the common thread running through all these names.
It's those links, isn't it? The transatlantic slave trade, exploitation, violence against indigenous people, conquest, all often under this guise of bringing civilization.
Yeah.
So the protesters, they were fundamentally saying, we don't agree with celebrating this. These symbols, for them, represented oppression, plain and simple.
Okay, so we see the history, we see the trigger, but let's dig into the monuments themselves.
Yeah.
How did they traditionally work? What was their job in society?
Well, traditionally, they were meant to be these really powerful symbols, national identity, heritage, collective memory.
Right. Celebrating big figures, big events.
Exactly. And in doing that, they kind of solidified the values and the politics of certain groups, often the powerful ones, the elites.
So they weren't just passive decorations.
Not at all. They actively shape how we remember the past. They anchor memory in a physical place. And importantly, they show who had the power to decide what gets remembered and praised.
Like in the late 19th, early 20th century, nation-building time.
Precisely. The ruling classes put up statues to figures they saw as representing, their idea of progress.
Which makes the Black Lives Matter movement's focus on them so interesting. It was a direct challenge to that.
Absolutely. George Floyd's death became this potent symbol of current struggle, of ongoing pain for Black and ethnic minority communities.
And that connected directly back to these historical figures in bronze and stone.
Yeah, it was like drawing a line from the historical oppressor embodied in the statue to the present-day experience of injustice.
So taking down the statues, that became a very visible way to protest that link.
A powerful visual statement. And, you know, it's not without precedent. History has examples of people removing symbols they see as tyrannical.
Like what?
Well, think about the Berlin Wall coming down in '89.
Yeah, huge symbol.
Or statues of Lenin being pulled down in Eastern Europe after the Soviet collapse. Saddam Hussein's statues in Iraq in 2003. Even more recently, Assad's statues in Syria.
Right. People pushing back against symbols of regimes they reject.
It's people asserting their right to challenge what those public symbols stand for.
Which brings up this whole idea about public space. Who decides what goes in it?
Exactly. And that connects to the concept of the right to the city.
Okay, tell us about that.
It's an idea from Henri Lefebvre back in 1968. Basically, it's the right of people, ordinary people, to shape and remake their urban spaces.
To reflect what they need and want.
Yeah, their demands for freedom, for justice, for better representation. So these actions, like taking down a statue, can be seen as exercising that right.
Now, we have to address the pushback. You often hear the argument that this is rewriting history or erasing history.
Right, that's a common criticism. But the counter-argument and what the paper suggests is that the aim isn't really to erase history.
That's more about.
It's about challenging the legitimacy of publicly celebrating figures tied so strongly to oppression, brutality, human rights abuses. It's questioning why that version of history is the one being honored in a shared space.
So taking down Colston's statue in Bristol? It wasn't about pretending he didn't exist.
No, it was more like creating an opportunity for Bristol to actually confront its history, to really look at it, understand the complexities, rather than just having the symbol of selective praise standing there unchallenged.
Okay, let's zoom right in on Bristol then, because the Edward Colston story really captures so much of this debate. For people outside Bristol, who was he? Why was his statue so controversial there?
Okay, so Edward Colston, he was a 17th century merchant, hugely wealthy, and a very significant portion of that wealth came directly from his involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. He was a major figure in the Royal African Company.
Right. But the statue wasn't put up then, was it?
No, much later, 1895. And it was framed around his philanthropy, his donations to Bristol, things like schools, hospitals, almshouses.
So a mixed legacy even from the start.
Extremely mixed. And that statue, because of his tainted biography, as the paper calls it, was controversial in Bristol for a long, long time. Activists had been campaigning for its removal for years before 2020.
Okay, and then in 2020, it's pulled down during the protests. But what made the Bristol situation really unique compared to maybe other places?
What happened next? After Colston's statue was gone, the London artist Mark Quinn came in and installed a temporary statue, completely unauthorized.
Unauthorized. Okay, what was it?
He called it a surge of power. It was made of black resin, and it depicted Jen Reid.
Jen Reid.
She's a black activist from Bristol. During the protests, after Colston was removed, she spontaneously got up on the empty plinth and raised her fist in the Black Power salute. Quinn saw a photo of that moment and was inspired to create the statue.
Wow. So a statue of a contemporary black woman making that powerful gesture put where the slave trader's statue used to be.
Exactly. Huge symbolic weight. Resistance, black empowerment, bringing a gender dimension to it too. And this is where that idea of counter-monument really comes into play.
Explain that a bit more.
Counter-monuments, it's a concept from James Young. They often challenge the whole idea of traditional monuments. They might be temporary, like this one made of resin, not permanent bronze like Colston's.
Right.
They're meant to provoke thought, maybe disrupt the narrative rather than just celebrate uncritically. Quinn's piece definitely did that.
I can imagine. So this unauthorized statue appears. What was the reaction?
Oh, it kicked off intense debates, especially online, on social media, people arguing about public space, about whether unauthorized art is okay, what the statue actually meant to people.
Yeah, because unauthorized art, it challenges the rules, doesn't it?
It does. It questions who gets to decide what's displayed. So some saw it as rebellion, a necessary statement. Others saw it as, well, vandalism or bypassing proper process. That tension was right at the heart of the debate.
Which leads us perfectly into the sentiment analysis part of the study.
Yeah.
This is where we get a sense of what people were actually saying. Remind us of the method.
So the researchers looked at 370 public comments on the Facebook page, Bristol 24/7.
Okay, a local news source?
Exactly. They collected comments from the 2 months right after a surge of power went up, so July 2020 onwards. And they were careful about privacy, anonymizing things.
It's a sample, right? Not everyone's opinion.
Of course, it's a snapshot from one platform, but it gives us real empirical data on how some of the community reacted. It's valuable insight.
In the headline finding, that 64.3% negative sentiment, what did that really show?
It showed significant discontent, really. Only about 18.7% positive, 17% neutral. So yeah, almost 2/3 negative.
That's high.
It is. It suggests that for many people commenting, the way things happen, the toppling, the unauthorized replacement was a major issue. It wasn't just about the statues themselves, but the process, or lack thereof. It tapped into those broader tensions around race, history, and who controls public space.
Let's break down those negative feelings. What were the main themes people were raising?
Okay. The paper identifies a few key themes in the negative comments. First, big one, was the illegality of the installation.
Right, the fact that it was unauthorized.
Exactly. People emphasized it bypassed planning rules, like one quote highlights. Replacing it with something unauthorized is just as wrong as the toppling. Who gets to decide? That kind of feeling.
Makes sense. What else?
Another theme was the potential for division and unrest. Some felt the statue was provocative, that it was stirring things up rather than helping dialogue, creating an us versus them situation. Okay. There was also a comparison to the Colston statue removal. People saying both acts, the removal and the replacement, were illegal and caused friction, suggesting a proper democratic decision was needed.
So frustration with the process on both sides.
Yeah, a sense that rules were being ignored. And linked to that, a feeling of public offense and potential backlash, worries that these actions could lead to more unrest.
And finally,
some questioned the artistic merit of a surge of power. Some didn't know Mark Quinn was a well-known artist and dismissed the work itself. There were some quite aggressive comments using terms like Marxist crap.
Interesting. And what about the language overall in those negative comments? You mentioned aggression, but...
It's actually quite striking. Despite the strong negative feelings, the researchers noted there were surprisingly few swear words or really vulgar language overall. Yes, some aggressive terms popped up: Marxist, mob, anarchy, provocative, division, illegally. But they weren't dominant compared to more neutral words like statue, people, black, white, Bristol, BLM. It suggests a certain level of maybe constrained anger, more civil than you might expect on social media sometimes.
That is interesting. Okay, now let's flip to the positive side. Almost 19% felt positively. What were their arguments? What themes came up?
The positive comments focused more on the symbolism and the potential for dialogue. One key theme was seeing the statue as art functioning as a statement.
Not just a replacement, but a deliberate artistic act.
Precisely. That it was meant to be provocative, to make people think, to raise awareness. Someone commented it was provocatively placed, expecting it to be removed, but achieving its goal of sparking debate.
Okay, what else?
The temporary nature was important for many supporters. They saw it wasn't meant to be permanent, but rather a moment for reflection, a temporary statement, as one person put it.
Right, not set in stone, literally.
Exactly. And a really big theme was community engagement and challenging racism. Supporters felt it forced important conversations about racism and social justice, giving a platform to marginalized voices.
So seeing the controversy itself is productive.
Yes. One powerful quote was, "What bothers me the most is the amount of racial hatred aimed at this statue of a black woman, and that is one of the reasons we need to actively fight racism." They saw the backlash as proof the statue was needed.
Wow. Any other positive themes?
Yes, framing it in historical context, seeing it as a way to correct an imbalance, provide more inclusive representation, and also defending artistic freedom, arguing artists have a right to express views and challenge norms, even if it involves civil disobedience.
And the language used in these positive comments, similar level of civility.
Yes, the paper notes an educated tone, again with very few swear words or overly aggressive terms. The common words were things like statue, black, white, people, Colston, art, statement, plinth, history, community, focused on the core issues.
So pulling all this together, this deep dive into what happened in Bristol, it really tells us a lot about these wider debates around public symbols, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It shows just how complex public opinion is. It's not black and white, excuse the pun. There are these deep underlying tensions about race, about history, about law, about who gets to shape our shared spaces.
And you mentioned that shared feeling of discomfort. That seems key.
It really does. The study points this out. Activists felt discomfort with Colston glorifying oppression, but critics also felt discomfort with a surge of power, its illegality, maybe feeling unrepresented by it.
So nobody was entirely comfortable.
Pretty much, and maybe that's the point. The paper brings in this powerful idea that discomfort itself might be necessary for change.
How so?
Well, it quotes James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until is faced. And other writers argue that in situations dealing with race and inequality, you need that discomfort to shake things up. Otherwise, the systems that cause the problems just stay in place, unchallenged. The friction, the arguments, they're part of facing it.
So connecting Bristol back to the bigger picture, the toppling of Colston, the reaction to Quinn's statue, it fits that pattern we talked about earlier. People challenging symbols of power they reject.
Exactly. It reflects this desire for our cities, our landscapes, to actually mirror demands for freedom, for racial justice, for equality. It's not about rewriting history in the sense of denying the past.
It's about challenging which parts of the past get glorified.
Precisely. Contesting the celebration of figures linked to oppression, demanding a more honest public memory.
So a surge of power, even with all the controversy and the fact it was unauthorized.
Yeah, despite all that, it clearly succeeded in sparking a citywide reflection. It made people in Bristol think hard about their public spaces, their history, and what kind of future they want to project.
It really highlights how important it is to understand these different views and to have inclusive conversations when we talk about shaping our cities.
Definitely. Nuance is crucial. Listening is crucial.
So a final thought for you, our listener. The next time you're walking through your own town or city, take a look at the monuments, the statues, the street names. Ask yourself, what stories are they telling? And maybe just as important, what stories are being left out? Whose voices do you hear and whose are missing?
Yeah. What does your community's public space really say about its values, its hopes for freedom, equality, and justice? Something to think about.